I'm here in Jacksonville, Florida, where Irma has had serious flooding effects. You can see this neighborhood behind me in the south side of Jacksonville. The streets completely underwater. Between surge effect and strong winds that have blown down trees and power lines, Irma did not make many friends here. On Facebook, she did have a very emotional post. There are cards, flowers, and even candles set up at this memorial behind me here in Norridge Walk. Pat and Cindy, this is the home where William Derrick lived and where he was shot and killed by a state police trooper during an armed confrontation. Windows in the home have been blown out. Police arrived here late Sunday night because of a domestic violence situation. It was during the early morning hours when things escalated. Police investigators are digging for answers in Livermore. That could lead to finding a woman who has been missing since 1986. Just a day after Trump touched down in Maine to rally supporters, Ted Cruz is also here ahead of tomorrow's Republican caucus. He just wrapped up his speech at the University of Maine in Orono. Barbara was just trying to get her mail at her mailbox at the time when the fox attacked her. She didn't think anyone would hear her screams, but luckily someone did. Lee and Cindy, behind me, that's Walker's Point. Here in Kennebunkport, it's the summer home of the former First Lady, Barbara Bush. Well, Todd, here in Jacksonville, yesterday they were talking about surge. Today, it's the winds and power outages. Thousands of Floridians are without power as Hurricane Irma moved from south to north. When you see the truck that Brianna Brown was a passenger in, you wonder how she made it out alive. The Dodge pickup that was driven by her stepdad was folded in half after a tractor-trailer truck slid into it during the pileup. Crews got the call just after midnight of a building fire at the corner of Pond and Union Street in Bangor. When they got here, flames were coming up through this home behind me. Now they've contained it. Hours later, it's just smoke coming out of it. Because they're so close to the St. Johns River, they're used to it. All of these residents say, you know, flooding is normal, but they've never seen anything like this. The York County Sheriff's Office continues to search for the person it says is responsible for driving a truck into an elderly woman's house last night. The Franklin County Sheriff's Department is warning about men posing as federal agents scamming residents. This year's Atlantic Cup has been one of the toughest since the race was first formed in 2011. Each sailboat crew of 2 had to deal with heavy rain and high waves running on little to no sleep.
I went, oh my gosh, how awful.
Rosemary Johnson and her brother, Greg Johnson, were shocked to see their road filled with police cruisers.
They kept lining up and just seeing a whole bunch of cars from way up there to way down to the next neighbor down here.
Just a quarter mile up the road from them is where William Derrick lived at 485 Pond Road in Wales. State police were called to the home after police say Derrick shot at his wife. By 3:30 this morning, an armed confrontation occurred between Derrick and police. Nancy Webster Libby's cousin is Derrick's wife and says she heard the confrontation happen from her home.
You'd hear it, and then you didn't hear it, and you'd hear it less, and I pretty much assumed when I heard the shot that something good didn't come out of it, that was for sure.
Police say Trooper James McDonald, a member of the Maine State Police tactical team, shot and killed Derrick during the confrontation. Those in this area who knew Derrick say that the 54-year-old was known for his odd behavior.
I've heard somebody say this morning that they would hear him talking to himself and walking down the road in the middle of the night.
They never thought that his behavior would result in his death.
Just don't have people killed right here, so close to us.
Derrick's body has been taken to the state medical examiner's office for an autopsy. As is standard in an officer-involved shooting, Trooper McDonald, a 7-year veteran of the force, has been placed on administrative leave with pay while the case is investigated by the Attorney General's office. The light of morning brought realization in Jacksonville.
Oh, I'm hanging in there. I got a mess down here.
Of what Irma left behind.
It came from way back in there.
A hurricane turned tropical storm that downed trees onto homes.
And the yellow house up there got damaged too, so they left.
Cars.
Well, there's the top is dented and over in the trunk.
And power lines. Not getting spirits down for Evelyn Jacobson.
Thank goodness it didn't smash the whole thing.
Who was thankful the tree in her backyard missed her home by just feet.
A really large crash, and I thought it might have been, you know, just something right there, but it came from all the way back there.
Other parts of South Side dealing with surge flooding.
It's great in its terribleness.
Brian Frew sharing his kayak
Adventure, honey.
to help neighbors get out of their homes safely.
A lot of people checking in on each other. It's really nice.
Before moving his own essentials to dry land.
This is my husband, Brian.
This morning we had a couple of people that were moving sandbags to their homes. We just sent them off with the kayak while we were moving stuff inside the house. Always, it's a community. You come together as much as you can. Woo.
As surge waters from the St. Johns River continued to rise,
Howdy, neighbor.
strong winds wouldn't give up, pushing a tree onto an already stressful day.
I heard a crack. I turned around and...
A house flooded, car trapped under a tree, and still you'll find positive perspective.
We're all alive.
Yeah, rough day.
Brian and his father were inside of that vehicle that had the tree come down. They made it out with no injuries, thank goodness. Their neighborhood behind me, still underwater. It will be quite some time before they're able to get back to check on their belongings and home. Reporting from Jacksonville, Florida, I'm Rob Nesbitt, News Center.
We're bird watching.
If you want to keep up with a 5-year-old with an appreciation for the outdoors,
Sunny in the trees,
you need to bring plenty of ambition.
But I think I see a nest.
Kellen Tilton can spot a bird from a mile away, as well as other species.
We get squirrels too. Squirrels.
Bird watching is just one of his hobbies. He's also pretty darn good at basketball.
And he goes for the shot. And he shoots. And he scores!
Celebrating his victories inside with his mom Elizabeth.
I've never did it that far back before.
And challenging her and his younger brother outside with a colder ball. You've noticed by now that Kellen has flair, but you've also probably noticed his wheelchair. Kellen had surgery to remove a tumor on his spine when he was 3 months old, but the tumor had lasting impacts that he's pretty good at explaining himself.
It was on my legs and my spine, and when I was getting bigger and the cells were spreading, something happened and one of the cells turned bad and it grew, and I think it touched the other cells and it made it bad.
That bad means that Kellen is paralyzed and has no use of his legs.
We know that he was kicking up until about 20 weeks in utero, and that's when he got really quiet.
As a nurse herself, Elizabeth knew the seriousness of her baby's delivery, but no parents can prepare themselves for the news that followed.
That next day, we were told it was neuroblastoma, and 3 days later, he started chemo. So he had 4 rounds of chemo, and he had surgery at 3 months old.
After the tumor was removed from his spine, doctors said that there was no longer any evidence of disease.
How many patients have you gone through?
He still makes a yearly trip to Dr. Stanley Chaliff at Maine Children's Cancer Program for health checks.
That it was in my spine and my tummy.
It's where he and I both learned that it's actually not uncommon for a child to be born with cancer.
It doesn't happen often, luckily. There are a number of cancers that can occur at birth. So neuroblastoma is one of them. The other is sometimes we can see some leukemias that present just at the time that a child is born. And very rarely you can see some brain tumors at the time the child is born as well.
What cancers did the kids have that you've been through?
When you're as well spoken about cancer as Kellen is,
Oh, I found something cool. Come over.
and as adventurous as he is, despite a difficult encounter with cancer, it makes sense to award him.
I got the one that looks like a nest.
The St. Baldrick's Foundation has named him one of their 2018 ambassadors.
And I represent all the kids across the country that have childhood cancer.
Absolutely excited about it, and he loves to tell a story, and he loves to be an advocate for himself and for others, so it was a perfect fit.
If Elizabeth can keep up with her 5-year-old, the two will make trips to St. Baldrick's events, schools, and of course hospitals.
What was the name of the cancer that you had?
Neuroblastoma?
Talking about his battle with cancer, but also spreading some of that ambition he's known for
I've never done it back here before.
in his foul shot,
New high score!
his bird watching,
Diagonal tree laying down.
t-ball practice, and even adaptive climbing and downhill skiing. Kellen is one of the most active ambassadors for childhood cancer that St. Baldrick's has ever chosen.
I want to say thank you to you for doing this work. Instead of taking it on the negative side, he continues to thrive and excel from some of the difficulties he had to go through. So I'm sure he'll do a phenomenal job as an ambassador.
When you're able to punch out cancer at just 3 months old, there isn't much in life you can't do, and nothing that you can't make the best of.
Ooh, I see something that looks like a nest.
In being able to be an advocate for himself, that brings positivity as well.